Hello there. So millions of hard-pressed pensioners have their winter fuel payments stripped from them, and now we see that fuel bills will go up by 10% too. The energy regulator Ofgem has piled more pressure on households by increasing the energy price cap by 10% to £1,717 from October onwards, i.e. just as the cold weather moves in. All because of rising costs for the fuel industry, leaving more of the poorest pensioners who've already been hit by Rachel Reeves's removal of their winter fuel payment to really have to choose between heating and eating. And before the general election, Keir Starmer was talking glibly about reducing energy bills by £400 if he won the general election. How's that coming along? If you voted Labour at the last general election, you should give your head a good, strong wobble. And the Labour government Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero, Ed Miliband, is already blaming the last Tory government for this. But the reduction in small boat arrivals over the last few weeks, though, is all down to Labour, isn't it? Anyway, it's scandalous that pensioners who live just above the tax credit thresholds will now be double whammied this winter, whereas well-paid and cosseted Labour MPs will be cosily warm in their second homes with heating paid for by the taxpayer. Here's Miliband talking to Sky News.
I know this will be really worrying news for lots of families who will face even greater struggles this winter. And it's a direct result of our country's exposure to international gas markets that are controlled by dictators. And that is a legacy left to us by the last government. That's why this government has a plan to do something about it. Our mission for clean, homegrown power that we control in this country. And it's why we've hit the ground running in just 7 weeks, consenting new solar power, overturning the ban on onshore wind, precisely to give our country the energy security we don't have at the moment.
So Miliband, who wants to see North Sea oil and gas production taxed and strangled to death under his watch, is betting the shop on plonking massive wind and solar farms across the country. But when the wind don't blow and the sun don't shine, we'll have to put load onto the already idling gas-powered plants, using even more imported liquefied natural gas, LNG. Because we won't be drilling our own out of the ground, will we? When there's no sunshine and or wind, it's obvious to even the most uninterested observer that no electricity will be generated. Multi-billions of quids worth of carbon fibre, steel, concrete and copper, all standing idle. So the standby infrastructure, the gas plants, that had been idle while the sun shone and the wind blew, then has to step in. And that's why energy is so expensive, because we have to have a huge amount of reserve gas power on standby to spring instantly into action as soon as the wind drops and the sun goes over the horizon. And where will all that new gas come from? Yes, those same despotic regimes Miliband's just talked about in that Sky News snippet. Because there'll be no new licences to extract gas from the North Sea, will there? And not a single peep, as far as I can see, about nuclear energy. Every ship arriving in our ports and offloading foreign LNG is proof of the total ineptitude of our political classes over decades. They have all failed to properly grasp the opportunity that nuclear power offers. Hence our perpetually failing economy and soaring energy bills. Now, if anyone remembers, there was a 5th round of bidding for offshore wind last year, I think, trying to attract budding investors. Those who would come in and spend billions of private investors' money on building and installing huge turbines far out to sea, together with all the infrastructure to get that electricity onto the land. But no one was interested. No one. And why? Because the investors looked at the maths and realised the contracts they would be asked to sign would cost them money rather than allow them to make a profit. Because they would not be allowed to charge a high enough price for the electricity they generated to recoup their investment and make a sufficient profit on top. And that was all under the Tories. If wind power is so cheap, as we are incessantly told, then why would the potential investors be turning down what we're led to believe is such a good bargain? Anyway, that doesn't protect hard-pressed pensioners from what can only be described as a vicious attack on them by the Chancellor Rachel Reeves. Or Rachel Thieves, as she's so quickly been labelled. I get the impression she's doing it because the elderly are more inclined to vote Tory. So I doubt she'll care that the energy charity End Fuel Poverty Coalition says that pensioners' energy costs have rocketed by 131% or £975 a year since the start of the energy crisis, while ordinary householders' bills have risen by 65% or £675 a year. And it's the elderly who most need their heating during winter to stay alive, let alone comfortable. Further, it is those same pensioners who will be more likely this coming winter to be admitted to hospital due to cold weather-related illnesses, putting more strain on the NHS during what is traditionally a very torrid time for them. Then Labour will blame that hospital crisis and the resulting deaths on the Tories, of course. But this pack of wolves called the Labour Party government will more likely be viewing it as an opportunity to free up a few more dwellings to farm out to the newcomers. Simon Francis from the End Fuel Poverty Coalition said, "The stark truth of the matter is that this winter will be the worst on record for pensioners' energy bills. The government needs to come up with a plan to prevent even more households from entering fuel poverty this winter, and fast." Now the Chancellor says she inherited a £22 billion black hole that needed to be filled, and that the first tranche of that would be paid for by the pensioners. But she is the one creating that black hole by handing out vast payoffs to the members of Labour's union paymasters. And that process has only just started. Once Keir Starmer has been persuaded to remove the legal shackles from striking, union action will snowball. Then the question is, who will be paying for those billions in higher wages? Savers? Homeowners? People trying to put a bit of money aside for a rainy day? So which is the nasty party now? And it's going to get worse for Reeves, because those pensioners who in the past struggled by with the winter fuel payment and were maybe too proud to ask for anything extra from the state are now finding out what they've been missing. Once they all turn up at the benefits office, claim form in hand, I reckon this little exercise will have cost the Treasury more than it hoped to save. And woe betide any Zimmer frame wielding OAP who goes out on a protest. They'll probably be locked up for being far right and carrying a deadly weapon. But at least they might get bed and board in one of His Majesty's prisons. However, on the downside of that, you can't claim a state pension if you're in the clink.